Today's daf is daf Yud Beis, and we'll begin on the third line, the end of the third line, Omer of Chizd. And so far we've been discussing the concept of Taanit shows, and that means whether a person could take upon himself part of the day as a Taanit, and that would be a kiyum Taanit. Omer of Chizd called Taanit shelo shaka olav chama lav shmei Taanit. If he didn't complete the Taanit until nightfall, then it's not a Taanit. It's not worth anything. And Rav Chizda was the one who taught us that Taanit shows doesn't apply unless he starts the day by fasting. He can't start in the middle of the day. That's as far as Taanit shows is. And that's called Shalot Ta'am Klum Ad Ha'erev. And now he's being mechadish that if he ate before the shows of the Taanit, let's say, for example, he was Mekabel Taanit that he should fast from Chatzos until the Erev. So he ate in the morning before Chatzos. That's not called the Taanit. And now he adds that Shalosh shakal of achama, he's coming to be machadish, that if he ate after the hours of the Taanit, but before nightfall, that's not called a Taanit at all. So therefore it comes out that Taanit shows in a situation where he ate in part of the day, before the Shasa Taanit or afterwards, in either case, it's not a Taanit. Masechet, the Gemara raises the following objection from a Mishnah that we're going to have later on in this parak. And the Mishnah talks about the Kohanim Leviim who do the avoda in the Mikdash. They're on duty, Anshe Mishma. And the halacha is Misanin v'lo mashlimin. They don't have to fast until the evening. They're busy with the avoda. They have the burden of the avodah on their shoulders. But we see clearly from that Mishnah against Rav Chizda that even though we consider their Taanit to be a valid Taanit, this, despite the fact that they're not mashlim the Taanit, don't complete the Taanit until Shkiyas Achama. Gemara answers, Hossam, that halacha in the Mishnah of Anshe Mishpar is not really a Taanit at all, but rather let's see, Urei Nafshe Bialmahu. They are only identifying with the tsar of the tzibur. They are not really entering into a Taanit. That Taanit cannot be considered a Taanit at all, and they're not even obligated in a Taanit. They're not going to recite, for example, the Tfilas Anenu, and truthfully speaking, according to the strict letter of the law, they can eat whenever they want to eat. So any Taanit that doesn't complete itself until Shkiyat Achama, if this is correct, is not a Taanit, doesn't have a shem Taanit. But rather, this is halacha of Litziure Nafshe. Litzayer al Atzmo. He suffers a little bit, and that's called the Taanit shows. But it's certainly not a Taanit. Tashma, we learned in a Mishnah, a Brisa, and this is a Brisa of Megillus Taanit. Omar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok, Ani mibnei badav shel Sna'av ben Binyamin. In other words, I am a descendant of Shevet Binyamin. Now we know that when Tisha B'Av overlaps with Shabbos, we don't fast on Shabbos, we postpone Tisha B'Av till Sunday. And that's what we did. The Achar Shabbos, because we don't fast on Shabbos. And on that Sunday, which was the 10th of Av, we fasted, but V'lo Ishlam knew we didn't complete the fast. We ate before evening. Now, in order to appreciate this concept of Yontif Shalonu, that a person can have his own Yontif, and as it turns out, for the offspring of Binyamin, that day, that Sunday of the 10th of Av was a Yontif for them. This is called Nidavas Eitzim. And as you know, the Maracha on the Mizbeach required Eitzim on a daily basis. And someone who would take upon himself, or in this case, an entire Shevet that took upon themselves, or a family that took upon themselves to bring nidavas eitzim, to contribute the eitzim for the maracha on, let's say, every single Sunday. And that particular Sunday happened to be Yud B'Av, which was a dichui of Tisha B'Av. And we fasted, but we didn't complete the fast. So on the one hand, we were makayim the mitzvah of Taanit, meaning Tisha B'Av. But on the other hand, it was not a violation of our yontif, which means the day in which we bring a korban is called a yontif. But we see clearly against Rav Chisda that you could have a Taanit even if you don't complete the Taanit till Shkias HaChama. So Gemara answers again, Hasam Nami, the same answer that we gave before. Let's see, Ure Nafshe B'Almahu. In other words, this is not considered a Taanit, and the proof of the pudding is because, as Rav Chisda says, you need Shkias HaChama. They didn't fast until Shkias HaChama, but rather it was only to be mitzayir themselves together with the tzibur, and in that sense commemorate the avelus of the Churban of Tisha B'Av. Toshma Yom Rabbi Yochanan, again an objection against Rav Chisda. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Aha b'tainis ad she'avu lebeisi." A person who declared, "I should be in a state of Taanit until I come home," and it doesn't matter when he came home. He could have come home in the second hour of the day, the third hour of the day, and he would eat when he got home. So you see from the Hanhaga, the way that Rabbi Yochanan achieved his kiyum hatainis was in a tainis that he wasn't mashal until Shkias HaChama. He only fasted until he got home. Our answer is Hasam lishmute nafshem yibein yitziyah u'diyav. In truth, Rabbi Yochanan never had in mind, he never intended when he said, I hate Taanit to be obligated in Taanit. What he was trying to do was, he was trying to get away with jury duty, so to speak. What does it mean? The Nasi asked Rabbi Yochanan to come join him and eat together with him. Rabbi Yochanan did not want to eat with the Nasi, and it would be a tircha for Rabbi Yochanan to come and eat with the Nasi. So in order to get out of it, he made believe that he had accepted a Taanit, but really he never intended to accept a Taanit. And in truth, he could have eaten immediately. It was not a Taanit because it's not Shkias HaChama. Omer Shmuel called Taanit lo kibulov mibod yom lav shmei Taanit. Now we have another restriction in Taanit. Until now we've been speaking about Shkias HaChama. In addition, another condition that has to be met is that he was makabel the Taanit the day before, mibod yom, before nightfall. And if he didn't accept upon himself the Taanit and he just started fasting spontaneously, that's not a kiyum Taanit. So the Gemara clarifies, v'yasiv mai, what would be the value of someone who sat in a state of Taanit, he fasted, but he never accepted it upon himself, mibod yom? And the Gemara is going to answer, it's worthless. Amar Rabba Bar Shilo, this person, dami l'mapucha de maya de zika. He's like a bellows that's full of air, meaning it's not called the Taanit at all. He wasted his time by fasting because he wasn't makabel the Taanit mibod yom. So now the Gemara presents a machlokes. Emas makabel. When does he have to accept the Taanit on the day before the Taanit? Rav Amar, according to the sheet of Rav, b'mincha. Mincha means not tfilas mincha, that's going to be Shmuel's shita, but rather it's a time in the day. It's what's called sheish shos umechzo bayom. Right, the day is divided into two parts, and it's 6 hours and another 6 hours. And mincha time is at the end of the 6 hours. We add another half hour because we're not sure exactly when the sun reaches its zenith. And according to Rav, he can accept upon himself at that point in time a haredi mochar b'tainis. Tomorrow I'll be in a state of tainis, even if he's in the middle of a marketplace. Shmuel says no. B'tfilas mincha, it's halacha in tefillah. Kabbalah's tainis has to be integrated into the very fabric of tefillah, which means at the end of his davening, and he's allowed to add Tosefes Ritzi v'Tachnunim, that's what we call a Lokai Nitzar, which is an add-on paragraph at the end of Shmona Esrei. At that point, he should declare Hareini Mocher Tainus. And it's got to be Tfilas Mincha, which is right before the beginning of the day of the Tainus. According to Shmuel, not only is there an absolute requirement of Kabbalah's Tainus in Tefillah, but moreover, if he was Makabal Tainus during Shacharis, the morning before the day of the Tainus, that's not meaningful or effective at all. It's got to be the Tfilas Mincha right before the Tainus, before the Yom Tainus. Now, this is called in our language, Mincha Gidola. However, Rabbeinu Gershon is even more machmir, and he says the Kabbalah's Tainus has to be at Mincha Ketana, which is 9.5 hours into the day, which is much later on. It's almost before Shkia. Now, I don't see here a discussion about why Shmuel requires Kabbalah's Tainus as an integral part of his tefillah. In fact, the poskim say that according to Shmuel, when he gets to Elokai Nitzar, and there he wants to be Makabel Tainus and say L'mocher Yeh Tainus, he hasn't yet taken his 3 steps backwards, what we call Akiras Raglayim. Why? Because he needs to integrate his Kabbalah's Tainus into the fabric of tefillah. And tefillah ends with Akiras Raglayim. So he has to be Makabel Tainus, L'mocher Yeh Tainus before Akiras Raglayim. Now, there's a long discussion here about a certain She'iltos of Rav Achai Gon, and he's quoted as saying that during that Tfilas Mincha, which according to Shmuel is when he's Makabel Tainus L'mocher, he will add Anenu. And if that be the case, and I'm not saying that everybody agrees with that sheet of the Shiltos, then perhaps that sheds a little bit of a light on the requirement of Shmuel that Kabbalah's Tainus has to be within the framework of Tefillah, which means that the Tefillah Hasmucha L'Tainus has to be converted and transformed into a Tefillas Tainus. And only a Tefillas Tainus could generate a Kiyum of Tainus. We're talking about a Yochid, Ben Adava, who accepts upon himself a Tainus. He needs a Tefillah that kicks off the Tainus. And it's stage 1 of the Tainus. How could tefillah be tainus? The answer is by adding anenu, integrating it into the fabric of his tefillah. That tefillah is upgraded and transformed to the status of a tefillah's tainus. And tainus is not just fasting. Tainus requires a tefillah of tainus that triggers off the tainus. I think that I have a proof to support Shmuel that Kabbalah's Tainus has to be integrated into Tfilas Mincha D'chsiv b'Megillas Tainus. We know that there's a Megillas Tainus which lists all the days of different miracles that happened, transpired in Jewish history, and those days are days where we're not allowed to fast because they're designated on the Jewish calendar as celebration. And it says in Megillas Tainus, after the enumerated list of those days that are forbidden as far as Tainus is concerned, it says Lahem, meaning with the exception of Kol Inish de Yasfe Eloi Mikadvus Dena Yesar. So we're going to have a long discussion here about the word Yesar. What does that mean? But in any event, the general framework of this statement of Rav Yosef to support Shmuel, just in a general sense, is that there are certain days that are fast days that obligate me to fast. If there's a collision between those days that obligate me to fast and the Yom Tovim that are enumerated in Megillas Tainus, then I will fast on those days, by virtue of the obligation that was generated upon me to fast on those days. And even though now it's a day of celebration, that celebration cannot undermine my obligation to fast. So if before the Yontif came about, he had already obligated himself in a Taanit, then the Yontif will not chal on that day, which is a day of Taanit. And again, as we said before, the essence of that celebration, that Yontif, is not to fast, but he has to fast because he's obligated to do so. So now we have to analyze this word Yesar. My Yesar. What does this word Yesar mean? Because Yesar sounds like, we have to obligate him. What do you mean we have to obligate him? He's already asur to eat because he has accepted upon himself a Taanit. Lav, shouldn't we really therefore interpret it Yesar atzmo b'tzilo? Tzilo means his tefillah. Tzilusa in Aramaic is tefillah. And Yesar means asar, according to Rav Yosef. We'll see another interpretation coming around the bend. But Rav Yosef insists that Yesar atzmo means oseres atzmo b'tainis b'tzilo, meaning in the tefillah of mincha before the day. And he's got to do that right now at mincha before the Taanit. The fact that he accepted upon his Taanit, himself a Taanit earlier, that's not valid. He's only obligated in Taanit because he was oser atzmo b'mincha, in tfilas mincha. If he wasn't makabel atzmo, then his Taanit is not a Taanit. It would not override the Yom Tovim of Megillas Taanit. Anyway, we see clearly, according to Rav Yosef's interpretation of this statement, we need and require a Kabbalah's Taanit in Tfilas Mincha. If he didn't accept him upon himself a Taanit in Tfilas Mincha, then it's not a Taanit. And that supports Shmuel that requires a Kabbalah's Taanit in Mincha. The Gemara rejects it. Lo. We're going to take out the word Yesar, and we're going to cross out the second Yud and substitute an Aleph. And instead of Yesar, it should be Ye Oser Atzmo, meaning he should accept upon himself at some point, that earlier the better, that he will makabel himself. And his Kabbalah's Taanit now overrides the Yom Tov Megillas Taanit, and this supports the Shita of Rav. And the Gemara says that this machlok between Rav and Shmuel about whether Kabbalah's Taanit has to be in Mincha, in the Tefillah, not earlier, is in fact machlokas Tanoim. Pligi Baha, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Berevi. Chada Omar, according to one opinion, we don't know who holds what, but he has the Girsi Ye Oser. Ye Oser is Miloshen Neder. In other words, he's dafka, he has to oser satzon b'neder at times. He has to take upon himself a neder of Taanit in order to generate a chi of Taanit. And that has to take place in Tfilas Mincha. And once the neder is chal upon himself, he's obligated in Taanit, even if it collides with the yontiv of Megillas Taanit. And that supports Shmuel. But Chad Omar, according to another opinion in the Tanoim, Ye Oser, we should substitute the word Ye Oser for Yesar, and it means a lashon of Isur, which means he should become Oser B'achila even during these Yom Tovim, whether he was makabel on himself mincha time in Tefillah, or if he was makabel himself outside the framework of Tefillah, and that supports the Shita of Ra. The Gemara clarifies, Leman di Omar, according to the Girsa of Yesar, the Bryce is telling us Kida Amrina. Like we said before, that he has to dafka be osers atzmo with a neder Taanit in Tfilas Mincha before the Taanit. Then the neder is chal and it's docha the Yom Tov. But Laman the Omer Ye Oser. But if you change the Girsa to Ye Oser, Mahi, what's the finish of this price? For sure, he's also b'achila as a result of his Kabbalah. Would I think otherwise? And the Gemara answers that the chidush here is that not only is his neder, but moreover, it could be that in certain situations, as we'll soon see in a brisa, his Kabbalah would be doche yomim tovim, even without the neder being chal. What does that mean? The sanya of Megillus Taanit, we have a brisa of Megillus Taanit called Inish de Yese Ilui Mikadus Denoye Aser. Any person that a chovas Taanit came upon him before these Yomim Tovim, Ye Aser B'Achila, he's Aser in Achila, and his Taanit overrides the Megillus Taanit. Ketzad? Yochid Shekibel Olav, Sheni V'Chamishi Shel Kol Hashana Kula. An individual accepted part of himself that he would fast on Mondays and Thursdays of the entire year, the Eru Bam, and as it turned out on a particular Monday or Thursday of one particular year, Yomim Tovim Ksuv Megillas Taanit. It coincided with a yontif that's enumerated in Megillas Taanit, means you're not allowed to be fasted. So what should he do in this case? On the one hand, he accepted that every Monday and every Thursday throughout the year he would fast. On the other hand, this particular Monday or this particular Thursday is a day that's enjoined from fasting by virtue of Megillas Taanit. So he's in a head-on collision. What should he do? It depends. Im nidro kodem l'gzeira senu. If he took a neder before Chachamim instituted the gzeira, prohibiting Taanit on those certain specific days, then yivatel nidros gzeira senu. Then his neder will override the gzeira. He'll have to fast on those days. But in gzeira senu kodemis l'nidros. So we're talking about that historical period when they instituted and enacted this gzeira of Iser Taanit in the days that are enumerated in Megillas Taanit. And if those days were already enumerated through the Gzeres Chacham as an Iser Taanit before he accepted upon himself and obligated himself to Musada, to Vatal Gzeres Senus Nidro, our Gzera takes precedence and trumps his neder, and he's not allowed to fast on those days. Now the Gemara analyzes the following question: does the Taanit begin at night or by day? For example, we had in the Mishnah earlier on Daf Yud that when it's drought and there's no rain and it's already gotten to the third day of Cheshvan or the seventh day of Cheshvan, and we begin thinking about a whole series of fasts. The first series are 3 tinios. And what happens if a Yochid was makabel upon himself to fast from Shacharis? And in those cases, a person's allowed to eat and drink at night, because again, here, the Taanit is just a reflection of what he was makabel. We learned in a brisa with regard to a Taanit that begins with Shacharis, ad mosai ochel v'shoseh, on the night before the Taanit, until what point? What's the cutoff point? And at that point, he has to fast. Ad sheyala amud hashachar. According to Rebbe, it means until we have daybreak, which is alos hashachar. And Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon Omer, no, he's got to stop eating even earlier. Ad kros hagever, he's only allowed to continue eating until kachel doodle do, until the Targolans call out their kriya. We start with the bracha in the morning of Hamavchin ben Yom ve'layla, right? That's krus hagever. And in the brisa doesn't stipulate what exactly is this kriya of the gever. Rashi seems to indicate it's what's called kriya rishona shel tarnagolos. And the Sfarim say that it's a tarnagol beinoni. In any event, the Gemara in Yoma has discussions about when exactly is krus hagever. I have the feeling, I can't prove this to you, that according to Rebbe, the halach of Taanit is dependent upon Yom. And any mitzvah that depends upon Yom requires that we wait until Amud HaShachar. Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon holds it's not halach in Yom versus Laila, but it's halacha in Kodem Hayom. Even before the day, he should already begin his fast, so that when he enters into the day itself by Amud HaShachar, he's already in a state of Taanit. Amar Abaye, Lo Shanu, this halacha that you're allowed to eat the night before the Taanit, that's only Ella Shelo Gomar Su'udasa. He started eating a su'ud at night. He continues eating it, and he's allowed to eat it through the night, up until, shall we say, Amud HaShachar or Kros HaGever. Avol Gomar Su'udasa, the very moment that he completes his su'ud at night, and now he wants to change his mind, and he wants to eat a snack or whatever he wants to eat. Eino Okli, he's not allowed to eat. And this is called Hesech Hadas. The very moment that he completes his Suda, yes, Hesech Hadas, he's like, so to speak, an implicit, latent decision that he is accepting upon himself a time. Now, again, what would Abai say if he made a Tanai and he said, look, this is not going to be my last achila. I'm eating my Suda, completing my Suda. I want to eat later. Then, according to Abai, it could very well be that he's allowed to eat. But in the absence of any explicit declaration to that effect, then once he's Mesiach Das from Achila, he's not allowed to change his mind and start eating. And that's with Gemar Seuda. And the implication is that the night is really part of the Taanit. There's a special heter that since, he's this is not Tisha B'Av, and it's not a full-fledged Taanit, and it only begins with day. So we'll give you a dispensation, will allow you license to eat at night. Esvei Rava raises the following objection from a Brisa. It says in the Brisa, Gomar, he completed his Suda, the Amad, and he got up, he's no longer eating. Hareza Ochel. He's allowed to eat up until morning. How explicit can you get against Abai? Abai says that once he finishes the suit at night, he's no longer allowed to eat. So the Gemara defends Abai, Hasam Kishalos Sileg. There is a situation in which even Abai would agree that despite the fact that he concluded his Suda, he still was not Mesiach Das. And that's called Shalos Silik. They used to have little tables. Everybody ate from his own small table. And when they really finally finished the meal, they removed the table. Until that moment that they removed the table, it's considered Lo Okar Atzmo Miachila. There's no Hesech Hadas. If he continues eating, it's considered a hemshech, a continuation of that Seuda, as long as the table is there in front of him. So that when Abai made his original statement that after Yigmar Suda, he's not allowed to continue eating, that was a case where not only did he finish eating, but he also was Masalik the Shulchan, or the Tavla, meaning the plates that he eats from the Shulchan. But if he hasn't done that yet, there's no Hesech Hadas. Ika the Amri, now Rava says a different definition. Lo Shanu. When does it say in the Bryce that you're allowed to eat at night up until daybreak? That's Ela Bil Shalo Yoshin, if he hasn't gone to sleep. So he finished his last eating on the night before the time, Gomer Sudoso, and he's still awake. So Rava says he's allowed to eat Aval Yosham, but if he went to sleep for the night, that for sure is Hesech Hadas. Eino Ochel. He cannot be Choser Ochel because Shena itself is an absolute proof that he has completed his eating. He went to sleep for the night. That's called Avsokas Achila. And that generates a Hesech Hadas. Honestly, I'm not sure if Rava means some sort of psychological statement here. We analyze whether he really had Hesech Hadas, he didn't have Hesech Hadas, he went to sleep, blah, blah, blah. I have a feeling that There's halacha of hesech hadas al pi din. The Jewish law will determine when it's hesech hadas. Shena equals hesech hadas esvei avai. Now he gets his turn up at the plate. We have a brisa that says Yoshan v'amad harei zochel. How can you get a more explicit brisa against Rava? The brisa says that he went to sleep, he woke up, and he's allowed to eat up until daybreak. So Rava answers, Hasam bimisnamnem. The case of the brisa is what we call nim velo nim, tir velo tir. What does that mean? He's kind of asleep, but he's not really asleep. If you snap your fingers, I'm just giving an example. The Gemara is going to give a different example. He will wake up and he'll respond. He's not in a deep slumber. And therefore, that shena is not considered afsaka and a hesek hadas. Again, I see over and over again, the Gemara is working with legal categories here, not with psychological svaros. Heichi domi misnamne. What is considered misnamne? Put this up here.